Happy Wednesday to everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited to have my first LinkedIn Live, my first time using StreamYard as well. So you'll have to be gentle with me. I will try to make sure I don't screw any technology up. Uh, Thankfully, I have my wonderful team backing me up who will hopefully save me if necessary. So, today we are here to talk about licensing your expertise. First, I will just briefly introduce myself. I am Erin Austin. I am a lawyer and consultant, and I am the founder of Think Beyond IP. And I created Think Beyond IP to work with female founders of expertise based businesses to help them create saleable assets so that the business is ready to sell when the founder is ready to exit. So, we are going to talk about the specific benefits of licensing to your business. But first, I would like to talk about where they fit into the context of creating a saleable services business. So, if you want to create a business that we can sell someday, we have to make sure that the business is saleable. And so there are a couple of key elements to creating a business that can be sold. And those are exclusivity and predictability. And so exclusivity means that you have assets that you own 100%, as well as you have positioning that you have your unique position in the market. So that's your exclusivity piece. The other piece is your predictability. So we're talking about selling a business. The buyer has to be confident that the business will continue to prosper in its hands in the same way that it has prospered in your hands. So they want to know that, if you show those revenue projections, that they can predictably kind of understand that, yes, these are good projections. They want to know that the business can scale. People buy businesses for the future of the business, not for the past of the business. So they want to make sure that that business will continue to grow. And they also want to make sure that the business can operate without you. I mean, unless you want to go with the buyer and have a job with the buyer, then if you're going to be exiting the business, then the business has to run without you. So exclusivity and predictability are important for creating a saleable business. So where licensing fits in is that it hits all of those markers of, well, I'll go back a bit, exclusivity and predictability, creating assets, strengthening your positioning, and creating predictable revenue. And so, how does it do that? The transformation of licensing is that it transforms you from an expert driven business, meaning Erin or Erica, whoever, like we're the expert of our business, to a business that is driven by our expertise that can be delivered by other people other than ourselves. And so that is how we decouple our revenue from our time and create leverage in our business. So if you have a program or a service or a training that can be delivered by a third party, then that is one that could be potential for licensing. Now, most service-based businesses do have this potential. Like there may be some expert-driven businesses that really depend upon the expert, and it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to train third parties to deliver the same service. I'm thinking of a woman in one of my masterminds who uses her intuition. She uses her intuition to work with businesses to help them kind of find their authentic selves and their authentic voice. And I think that would be a little bit difficult to train other people to do. But for most of us, we would be able to train other people to do what we do. So, what is licensing? So, a license is a grant of rights from the creator of an intellectual property asset to the user of that asset. So in our case, the licensor is the individual or organization who creates the asset, which in our case might be a productized service or training or methodology, and we license it to the licensee. And so we grant rights to the licensee to use our product, service, or methodology. So that is a license, that transfer of intellectual property rights through a written agreement that contains, strict terms and conditions, payment obligations, things like that. That is your license. So, what are the benefits of a licensing program? We talked about the general benefits to creating a saleable business by creating that asset that you own. The other benefits are, positive cash flow. When we're a service-based business, often we are paid in arrears. So we provide the service first. Maybe we get an upfront payment, but certainly if we're billing by the hour or billing by the day, a lot of times we're getting paid in arrears. So when you have a licensing program, you have that positive cash flow. You're getting paid your license fees up front. The other thing is you create that recurring revenue. License fees are something that are paid periodically, annually or monthly, depending on the nature of the license. And so when we go back to our predictability, having recurring revenue is a very good indicator of the predictability of the revenue in your business, as opposed to, say, project by project revenue, which can be spotty. So it has the benefit of recurring revenue. The other is that you can expand without hiring, more experts. If you're an expert-driven business, then you need more experts to continue to grow. And so when you use licensees who are kind of outside experts, then you can grow without kind of having to develop that, create more staffing in-house with those experts. And also in the event that you have a service that requires, in-person delivery, then you don't have, you can expand without having to change your location from where you do your work. And then because you are using those licensees with their license fees to grow, you can grow much more quickly than you could if you're doing it with in-house experts. Let's say you created, brought on 10 licensees, how much simpler that is, and more quickly you can do that once you get your licensing program in place than trying to onboard 10 new experts internally. So benefits of licensing. And then, so let's talk about whether or not licensing is right for your business. So these are some essential elements, and they're essential because you really do need each of these in order to create a successful licensing program. And you'll want to have these in place before you pursue it. So one, you need to have a unique offering, productized service methodology. There has to be something that would cause a third party to license and pay license fees to you instead of just developing it themselves. So if it's something fairly generic, like you do branding services, but you just kind of, talk to people and, whip out, some of your ideas, like that may not be that unique that they can't, like, I can do that too. I'm kind of creative. I can do that too. So you need to make sure you have something unique that would encourage someone to want to pay you for your methodology the way that you do it. Also, you need to have a successful track record. They have to know that what you do is successful. So you show that through sales history and through client testimonials. So if I'm going to license your methodology, I want to know that it's effective and that clients are happy with it. There has to be market demand. A very good indicator whether or not there's market demand is, do you have a waiting list? So if you have clients that you want to serve, but you can't because there's only so much of you to go around or so much of your team. So then you have to think about, how am I going to meet that demand? You could do it by growing internally, or you can meet it by creating a network of licensees. And then, of course, it has to be documented. You have to have your standards and procedures documented and systematized. That's how licensees will be able to learn your methodology or how to deliver your service, and how they can get predictable results by using your methods and your standards and procedures. Licensees, because they are paying that license fee up front, they will want to know that they can get some return on their investment relatively quickly. How quickly that happens will depend on the nature of the service. So if it's something relatively simple, like someone, let's say they're a graphic design firm and they want to add website development to their offerings, they probably have the pieces to get up and running very quickly. If it's something that's more complicated, that requires kind of more advanced skills, then it might take a little bit longer to get up and running. But they will want to know that it's not the equivalent of getting a new degree in order to be able to use your methodology and get up and running and see some return on their investment. And then, of course, there has to be some credibility. You need to have high credibility, and you'll show that through your expert positioning in the marketplace. Because one, it will help you sell your methodology to potential licensees if you have that expert positioning, and they know that they'll be able to borrow that expert positioning when they are in turn selling the service to their clients. So, types of licensing programs. There's the train the trainer. I call it the train the in-house trainers just to make the distinction here. So when you train your in-house trainers, if your current clients, you go to them and you provide training to them. And instead of you going on site to do that training, you would train someone who's in-house to the client. And so instead of your client being your client, they would become your licensee. So you would go there, you would train their in-house people, you would support them, you would provide the materials, and then your client becomes your licensee, paying you a license fee for permitting their in-house trainers to provide your training directly to their employees. And another way to proceed is training independent providers. So these are people who have their own clients, and so they'll be adding your productized service methodology to the services that they provide to their clients. And so we have the basic license, which we talked about earlier, where you are granting the rights to that licensee to use your methodology to deliver that service to their clients. And then the next level up from that would be a certification, where it includes the license, but you also have some sort of process for them showing that they have mastered the concepts and the ability to deliver your methodology appropriately. And that might be done just on the front end. Maybe at the beginning of the license period, they would go through some sort of training period that they have to prove, that they understand the concepts. Or it could be something that happens on an ongoing basis through continuing, education, or continuing to participate in ongoing training. So those are the most popular types of licenses. A license, is a creature of contract, and therefore it can, be anything and all things, depending on the nature of the services, the nature of the licensees. And so, but these are some of the most common ones and the easiest to document. So certification versus license. I have, done a couple of posts about this, so I'll just say just really briefly that you may want to go closer to the license side when, the end client is somewhat sophisticated buyer, like large corporations, and the service is like a productized service, something that's highly systematized, and more towards the certification program when the service is is difficult to systematize, requires some advanced skills, and that where the end client was really relying on that certification in order to judge the quality of the service. And so, whether or not to include a trademark in the license, well, that really depends. The thing about including a trademark with a license is you don't want to have an accidental franchise. And an accidental franchise happens when you think you're just doing a license, or more likely a certification, because certification usually has some parameters around how you deliver that service. And when you combine a trademark with a license with some measure of control, then you slip into franchise territory. And so, depending on the nature of the license, you may or may not want to include that trademark. And the risk of slipping into the accidental franchise is if there's, a great deal of control about how your licensees use the materials. And the other is if the majority of their income is going to come from that license. So, if, for instance, I use a restaurant analogy. So, if you have a restaurant and your service is just one menu item, then that's on the license side. But if your service that in your license is like the restaurant, like McDonald's, that's a franchise. And so it doesn't have to be extreme as McDonald's, but let's go to say, you have a special way of providing, a website in a day. And that is the license that that's the nature of your license, that you're licensing to licensees your methodology for doing a website in a day. And so someone just creates an entire business around your website in a day methodology. That starts to look a lot like a franchise, as opposed to, say, the graphic design business who just adds your website in a day methodology as just one of many services that they provide to their clients. So the trademark is the issue there. So it really is a case-by-case basis whether or not you want to include a trademark in your license. So as you can tell, when you license your methodology, your productized services to third parties, you are creating competitors. And so you're probably wondering, how do I protect my intellectual property from my competitors that I've just kind of handed that to them on a platter? And so first of all, like we do it through intellectual property protections. It is your intellectual property, and there are both statutory protections under intellectual property laws, and you also have your contractual protections through your license agreement. So when we're service providers, typically our intellectual property are materials that are protected under copyright. We talked about trademark a little bit, so I just want to focus on your copyright protection. And so all those your written materials, if you have videos, maybe there's some sort of, even maybe some software that you're allowing them to access. So the subjects of your license, you will want that intellectual property to be registered with the Copyright Office. So you have copyright registration. The other is you will have a license agreement that is prepared by a professional, and that would have your restrictive covenants in there. That means there'd be like no use provisions, confidentiality provisions, non-compete provisions in that contract. And then finally, you want to have really careful selection of your licensees. Licensees are not a free-for-all. You want to have some sort of formal process of evaluating your licensees and making sure that's a really good fit. And you want them to succeed. I mean, obviously, the more success your licensees have, the more value your licensing program will have. So I will stop talking now. And so if there are any questions, I am happy to entertain those now, which you can stick in the I'm wondering, Annie or Danielle, is there a way for people to hear? Is it just one way communication? That I can hear them. Is it just one way? It is just one way. That's why I have my people here. All right. So I have Erica mentions the accidental franchise. Yes, it is it is something that people get in trouble with. And the way they get in trouble, I mean, first of all, if you're not familiar with franchises, they're very highly regulated. So franchises, every single state, that's the other thing. Every single state has its own franchise law. They're all just a little bit different. You need to, like, there's complicated registration requirements. And then once you have a franchise, the idea behind the franchise laws is to protect people who make an investment in your intellectual property through buying a franchise, and then your ability to take that franchise away. And so if you have a licensing program and something goes wrong with the licensee and you need to stop that, take away that licensee's license, and they have made, they've created a whole business around it in the website in a day example, and you take that away, then if that is really a franchise, then they have remedies against you because you haven't followed the franchise rules in granting them that license to create their website in a day. So yeah, so it is, I mean, everybody loves their trademarks. I mean, trademarks are having a day. And we want to build brands. And so we think brands, we need to have trademark. And then if we're going to have a licensing program, of course, we're going to include that trademark in the licensing program. But then you really do need to look at how they're going to be used by licensees before you go there. Annie says tips and recommendations for structuring compensation for licensees. Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the nature of what the service is. So let's say you're a trainer currently, and it could very much mirror the way that you charge your current clients. So let's say you provide trainings that are by the day. Then you can also, take an estimated revenue that you would get from using your license and have some percentage of that as part of your annual license fee. Maybe you charge by the head to your clients. So your license may be by the head. Let's say you do that the in-house trainer model. Then it makes a lot of sense for you to also charge your client, who's now your licensee, by the head. If you have a productized service. So typically productized service has a flat fee. If it's productized service, it has a flat fee. And you have some projections about, what percentage of that flat fee they're getting from that productized service that they would pay to you. And you would estimate that out, and some percentage of that would be your annual license fee. And so it, unfortunately, it depends on the nature of, is it a train the trainer, or is it training the freelance provider? And also, if you have a certification program, you'll probably see a kind of an upfront cost. So that upfront cost will include the training and certification process. And then after that certification process, you would have an ongoing license fee for that. Do you need a minimum annual revenue to branch out into licensing? Well, I don't know that you need, I mean, I think that if you meet those requirements, that you will probably by nature have a minimum. If you have something where you have demand that you can't, serve all those clients because they're waiting for you. If you have gotten to the point where you have, a strong market positioning, that you're considered the expert. If you have that sales record, and that you have, you documented your procedures, that, you probably are running a fairly successful business that is at the higher end for your market. So depending on the nature of your revenue, but you're going to need to have that thing where people are going to come to you. So there's going to have to be some expert positioning there in place. So I would put it more there. I think that would just by nature drive a kind of a certain number based depending on your industry. Yeah, Erica asked, can you control what your licensees charge their clients, or does that veer into franchise territory? And so it does. Like once you start controlling how people deliver your service, it veers into franchise territory. You would want to suggest something. Again, like if they want to get the benefit of your expert positioning and create, well, here's one thing. Your license fee will kind of provide a minimum, right? Because they have to receive a profit off of that. And also, if they want to benefit from your expert positioning, then they have to position themselves as a high quality service. And so, and you can certainly, if you find that they aren't a good fit because the way that they're delivering the service at the price point, they're not able to deliver quality service because they're underpricing their service. That would be a reason not to renew their license. But certainly you'd want to suggest a license fee, and that would be part of your vetting of your licensees as well. You shouldn't be, entering license agreements with people who you feel would, kind of bargain basement the service. So any other questions? Well, I thank you so much for joining me today. Oh, okay, Erica. So, as part of your licensing certification program, do you also teach your licensees how to position themselves, sell the service, and price the service? That gets you to, you can do that. That's a lot to do. But certainly people will have, let's say they'll have a website that, like that will say like, these are the people who've been trained by me. Like, so you might have a place where people can go and look for who's been, like if you use Salesforce or something or ClickUp, you might have like, who are the certified people who've been certified to provide training in this. And you might have a place where people can come and do that, so you can help them with that. When you have a joint marketing plan, like you have like a unified social media, unified email newsletter that everybody uses, that is one of those things that can slip you into franchise territory if there's a trademark associated with it. Just remember that the franchise requires a trademark too. So if there's not a trademark going with it, then you can do these things. You're free to do those things. But that is a different thing than licensing your expertise, unless your expertise is in, positioning and selling the service. But so if you're licensing your expertise, and that should be kind of, that zone of genius stuff is what you're licensing. But yes, you can do that. You can do that if that's what you like to do. You definitely want to have licensees that are successful. And so having a community for that where they can talk to each other and support each other is certainly very helpful. Having, interacting with them, you want to have them feel like they're part of something. So maybe you have, Slack channel or a Facebook group or something where they can come together, and that you would answer questions. You definitely want to provide support. That's for sure. All right. Well, it has been wonderful to be here. I just want to remind you that you can always find me on LinkedIn or come on over to thinkbeyondip.com, where we have lots of freebies that talk about this and other um, uh, resources to help you create a scalable and saleable business. And I thank you so much for joining me today.